Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I'm Dakota, the Dakota Woods Outfitter, and today we're going to be talking about the 22 versus the shotgun for the outdoorsman. Now, I largely talk about this on a small game aspect, particularly squirrel hunting, okay? So today we're going to be covering this in general towards the end, but first we're going to deeply cover squirrel hunting, and you may hear me from time to time say something about rabbits or mink or whatever it is that you like to hunt. I'm a big fan of hunting a lot of things, so um, we're going to cover the reason why I choose these guys here in a minute. All right. Let's start off with the 22 because I think that there's a lot going on with the 22 that folks don't understand nowadays. And so I wanted to address that too. So the 22 long rifle cartridge to me is one of the most resilient homesteading small game cartridges out there. And I say that because as somebody who grew up on a homestead, when you have fields, you have drip tape, you have the actual crop itself, and you have like plastic rows, you have plastic over your rows sometimes. You don't want to tear that mess up because a lot of the times you can, if you play nice, reuse it next year. Not necessarily capable all the time, but I will say that putting one lead bullet into something versus 120 lead BBs all across your field, tearing up your drip tape, possibly tearing up the plastic on your row, and guaranteed to most likely tear up whatever it is you're trying to grow. The 22 is going to solve that problem for you, and you can be a little farther away. So as opposed to having to worry about them hopping away from you while they're sitting there gnawing on something, you can get them. Okay. This also means that at nighttime, when you can see the eyes on, like, let's just say raccoons, anything like that, you don't have to leave the house and walk down to the chicken coop to take care of the problem. You can shoot them from the porch, and it's really not going to wake too many people up. It's just not that obnoxious of a round. Well, it may wake somebody up, but it's not going to scare them out of their sleep. It's just going to be like, hey, what was that? I love that about the 22 growing up. Now, do not get me wrong. I prefer the old shotgun. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But one thing that I do have a problem with is the 22 caliber round itself is not very unreliable. Now, don't get me wrong. Rimfire cartridges as a whole over the history have been horribly designed, have been horribly put in, poorly seated, poorly oiled, poorly greased, poorly stored, etc. But I have found that the 22 long rifle of today is extremely reliable. And like I said in a previous video, you just get one block. You get one actual, like, it's the fault of the cartridge shot out of every 5 to 10 boxes that you shoot, and that's a maybe. 9 times out of 10, it's a failure to extract because the extractor on your gun is either old or not functioning, or the gun is dirty. Now, I did want to also take a brief moment to notate that if I was picking a 22 for the rest of my life, it is hands down going to be a Boy Scout Model 2 rifle because it's bolt action, it has great peep sights, and it runs very, very well. That would be my hands down 22. That to be said, y'all, the squirrels in the south, which is what I really want to get with y'all, and really the eastern woodlands, we have a lot of pines that are up here, and then we have a lot of big broadleaf, like what you guys call shade trees, those big, thick broadleaf trees that actually provide shade. Those guys are like down here, their canopies are here, and then my belt line is about where the ground level is, right? In the summer months, like right after the summer's ending, you're coming into the beginning of the squirrel hunting season. If you're out there hunting on day one or even into the first 2 months, you're still going to have a lot of that foliage on those trees. And those squirrels have already taken the time to take all those acorns and put them in the ground. Now they're up there producing weight for themselves. They're putting on weight. They're high up in these canopies. And the problem is the 22 cannot bust through both, especially in the areas that I hunt. So when you do have opportunities to get these guys, they're stupidly active. They're moving around. They're just up, down, left, right, and sideways. It's a lot easier to grab a shotgun and take them out of their misery, put them in the game bag, and get going. As the leaves fall, as they're more wary, as they're less worried about putting food away and more worried about getting ate, they're going to start stopping a lot more. They're going to start being a little more ground-based. They're going to already have their food in those ground holes. They're going to be coming to get them. That's when I transfer to the 22. Okay. Another time I love the 22 again is if I'm hunting rabbits out here on like a big field. It's very easy to wait till the early morning when they're feeding to come up close to the fields and just bam, bam, get a couple of them. and be done, as opposed to, again, having to use dogs or people or some means to flush them out, including oneself, and then hopefully get that game. Okay. Which segues me into the next stage of why I like a shotgun over a 22 for your all around rifle, right? This guy right here, particularly the Winchester M200, it's a Sears and Roebuck model, is one of, if not the best shotguns on the modern market today. It's a 5+1 tube of 2 3/4 inch, and you can do so much with that. Particularly with the shotgun, you get the opportunity to choke up, choke down, extend the barrel, shorten the barrel, extend the tube, shorten the tube, change the load size, change the load weight, change the shot, change the powder, etc. And you can even change the actual projectile itself from buckshot to birdshot to slug to weird stuff you buy on Amazon, ammunition kind of stuff. In fact, funny enough, I like to use the incendiary, the Phoenix breath thing, to light big piles of like diesel covered. Like a good example would be when we get this pile over here ready to roll down there. I don't know if you can see it. When we get that piled up, we're going to end up using some Phoenix breath to light it, because you can be far away and light 2 or 3 piles at one time, as opposed to have to walk up to it, light it, and run. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong; it's not very dangerous to light that, considering it's diesel. It's not going to go blam like gasoline. But consider that. On top of the fact that, again, when animals are on the move, let's say your squirrel is on the move, it's the early season. That squirrel is hopping from tree to tree. He's trying to get from place to place. There's 100 squirrels moving around. They're all fighting for territory. They're running around. You can go ahead and grab that guy on the run, and almost guarantee, as long as you've actually taken at least a moment of your time to get acquainted with the shot and the pattern, you've got game animals on the table at that point. Yes, I do understand that the 22 is a lot. You can get 550 rounds for about $50-$60 in today's economy. That's great, but it's kind of hard not to come home with game if there's game in that area when you have a shotgun. And that's just my experience. I've never walked outside and missed a shot with a shotgun before in my life. I take that back. There was one time when we were rabbit hunting, and I'd walked up on a pile to kind of look down into a big, huge, like hay field, and I'd happened to spook 2 of them. And when I turned around, I shot and missed. And that was with a 12 gauge. Like it was totally my fault. But I mean, it's extremely hard to miss with a shotgun unless they're in transit in the air. I've found that is kind of a thing that takes a little bit of practice to do. If you don't have a particular shotgun that you practice with, flip-flopping different shotguns for that particular task could cause a little bit of issues. But that brings me to my next piece. Is outside of the small game world, you have waterfowl, you have turkey. All that can be taken with a 22 universally. And if you're on organic land, you can put steel shot through this. You can't really find steel shot effectively, if there even is a thing. I'm not too sure if there is or not. I've never seen a steel 22 round. If they exist, I'm unaware. Please inform me in the comment section and tell me what your opinion of them are. But I'm well aware of the fact that you can get steel shot from Walmart. Steel shot, low brass, you're not going to tear too much up, and you're still going to get rid of the problem. Again, you might mess up your rows or whatnot. You may possibly put a hole in that drip tape, and Dad will hate you for a little while. But again, that's repairable. Lead poisoning is not really repairable. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is something that's really important to me, because I believe in training the next generation. In fact, the only sole proprietary reason why I'm on YouTube is because my generation did not grow up like I did, and definitely didn't grow up like you did. And they need an opportunity to learn from somebody that they trust and that they connect with in order to get out into the outdoors and learn these things. Learn why the 22 is effective. Learn why guns are important. Learn why hunting is important. Learn how to take care of yourself and not have a phone do it for you, right? So that comes down to marksmanship, okay? If you're telling me I want to teach my son, daughter, friend, family, goldfish, or whatever, um, I'm going with the 22. And here's why. Recoil, very, 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 very light. Ammunition count, very, 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 very high for a decent price. And they get to understand bullet drop. They get to understand that guns need to be clean because 22s need to be clean. They need to understand how to take care of a firearm. They need to understand how to carry a firearm. They need to understand the fundamentals of shooting. I do not believe in teaching a young man or woman to shoot anything with a scope on it until they're extremely competent with IR sights. And Dad, if you're watching, I appreciate you, Pops, because if you would have taught me to shoot with a scope, I'd be retarded today. I said it. I don't care who gets mad. I don't believe in them. I've got one scoped rifle in my house, and I put a lot of meat in the freezer. Um, that to be said, the iron sight is a great way to teach your kids actual, shooting practices. And it also teaches them to focus on multiple things at one time. You got sight picture, sight alignment. It's really important to understand that. And you can stop them from not noticing their surroundings. Understanding what's in front of, at, and beyond the target is a lot easier to do when you can see everything. And it also teaches them to be aware of what's to the right and the left of the target that may find its way in that path whilst they're learning to shoot. And it's subconscious, a lot of it, but it makes a difference. And I found that to be the case a lot of the time. So again, 22 is an amazing rifle to have if you're going to be teaching somebody how to shoot. It's also an amazing first gun because they are very inexpensive to get. Even these nice ones like the Winchester 74, I got this for $300 after tax out the door. In pretty darn well mint condition. In fact, I've got some newer guns at the house that aren't in this good condition, like my Ruger Blackhawk is beat to mess. And this guy's in a much better condition, being about 4 times its age. So I did want to address that. It's also easier, by the way, to give this to a young man or woman and let them off into the world because that bullet is going to go there as opposed to spread out. And I have also found that kids like myself, when my dad gave me my first 22 to run around with, a little cricket 22, it's a lot less terrifying than some kid running around with a shotgun. That's just how people have become nowadays. It's unfortunate, but it is the truth. They think this is a pellet gun. Your kid goes off to go camping or whatever, and they don't think much about it. It's not very loud. Sounds a lot like a pellet gun. People don't think as much as if they hear a in the background, possibly on an off season, possibly near the city. Dad, if you're watching, you know what I'm talking about. So understand that is a big thing, and it's an opportunity for your kids to learn at an exponentially cheap rate, and it's an opportunity for you to be able to afford to teach them as much as they need to. Now we come over to the shotgun, right? The 12 gauge shotgun in particular has a fairly decent amount of kick, which prepares your child for that scoped rifle that's actually going to be adequate for big game if they ever move out of your state and move to like a western state or whatever, right? I say this because, again, you give your kid this and their incompetencies are gone. If they can point in that general vicinity 9 times out of 10, if they're generally on target, that spread's going to make up for it. They're going to get game, which means they're going to get an opportunity to clean game, which means they're also going to get an opportunity to check their meat because they also have to look for pellets, which forces them to check their meat in the process, right? That's why I like the 12 gauge. It's why I love that my dad trained me up good on both. The reason why I say this about the kick is because kids nowadays and people my generation, they did not grow up like I did with guns all over the place all the time in controlled atmospheres, and they weren't taught about the understanding of how important it is to be safe with these things. That to be said, again, it's going to give them used to that kick before you put them behind a scope and smack their eye clean out of their socket. You know what I mean? Not that that happens, but you get what I'm saying. And these things are a lot more hardy than a 22. They're going to take a massive beating. So while your child, son, daughter, or indifferent runs off into the woods and leaves it outside for 3 days because they're stupid, like I was, they're going to find an opportunity to clean this thing. It's going to be very easy to do, and there's going to be a lot of it to clean. It also teaches them to understand that there are different calibers for different purposes. A lot of people want to grab onto that 22 will do anything you want it to do. Have I killed a deer with a 22 in my life? Yes, I have. Will I do it every year, all the time to feed my family? God, no. Why would I do that? I don't even really like the shotgun entirely too much in comparison to a 270 or another rifle cartridge of choice, like the 30-06, because they're just more effective in most applications, right? So, but what I'm getting at is you get to teach your kid that there are particular tools for particular tasks. You get to learn that with the shotgun. And so, you get to find out that, hey, birdshot ain't going to do too well on hogs, and hogs ain't going to really do too much against a slug. And, buckshot is great if somebody's trying to hurt you, or something's moving at a fast pace like a deer, and you're trying to get as many with dad or mom as possible, or granddad. Running dogs here in the South is still a big thing. There's a lot of folks that do it, and that's going to step up to the plate. The last thing they really get to learn with that is the choke method. So they get the opportunity to understand that, hey, you can take that small game, you can take the turkey, you can take the waterfowl, you can take big game. Well, you can take big game, you can take medium game, and you can easily take small game. So it's going to be a lot more indicative to the economy that's coming up because you don't have to buy multiple guns. We're in a lucky economy, what I call right now, where it's hard enough to where you should be hunting, but it's not so hard that you can't buy a couple guns to do it. Those days are coming to an end, and hand-me-down guns like the ones I have here are largely going to be important. So just a quick recap on this. 22s are going to have a lot of ammunition count. They're going to have a lot of opportunity to learn rifles. They're going to have a lot of opportunity to clean, and they're also very, very good for people that are in the cities because they're a lot quieter. 12 gauge is going to teach you a lot about managing recoil. It's also going to be one of the most versatile firearms you ever allow your child and or purchase for your child to use. And yourself. I say your child because a lot of us here in their 50s and 60s, and I'm on my way into that world possibly. We'll see. So my point being is, y'all make sure the next generation has what they need. Make sure that you tell them the truth about these things and don't stick on annex, okay? At the end of the day, I own both, and there's a reason why that is, because I can afford to do so, and it made sense. This right here is great once you figured out where you're hunting and everything. This guy right here is great anywhere you go. You have the opportunity to take game, and again, there are certain instances where you'd prefer 22, but you're still going to get the job done most of the time here, whereas this guy has some shortcomings that he doesn't. So understand that the 22 and the 12 gauge are both great rounds, and I'm super excited to allow y'all to see this video because I wanted to venture into this type of conversation, whereas in the previous video I just talked to y'all about kind of why I got what I got. But this is my mindset on both of these two. So when we see new videos come out for me about squirrel hunting, rabbit hunting, deer hunting, you kind of understand where I'm coming from. And when we do manage to sit down and venture into the survivalist series, you'll understand where I stand with the 22 and the 12 gauge in advance so that I don't have to make the video as long as this one was. Guys, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.